She was a millionaire's daughter, stranded on a lonely road. He was a poor mechanic who had nothing but grease on his hands and gold in his heart. One broken car brought them together, but the world tried to tear them apart. What happened? Next, we'll break your heart and heal it too. Welcome to Larry's Zone. Thanks for being a part of our community. To get a shout out from us, click on the like button. Do well to subscribe also. Comment to let us know where you're watching from. The sky was heavy that afternoon, thick with clouds that threatened to burst at any moment. The wind picked up, carrying dust and the smell of rain. On the narrow road just outside the quiet town of Woodglen, a sleek black car slowed to a stop, coughing once, then falling silent. Selina Hartley hit the steering wheel in frustration. "No, not now," she muttered, glancing at her phone. No signal, of course. She stepped out, her white heels crunching against the gravel. She was dressed far too elegantly for the dusty roadside. A cream blouse, gold earrings, her hair perfectly done. But now, all that didn't matter. Her father's voice rang in her head. "You're not made for that world, Selina. You're meant for places where your shoes don't get dirty." The sky cracked open. Rain began to pour. She ran back into the car, slamming the door. Headlights from a passing car lit her up for a second, then sped away. Nobody was stopping. She was alone, on a back road, in a storm, with a dead car. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Just then, a knock on her window made her jump. She turned to see a young man, drenched from head to toe, holding a worn-out toolbox. "Need help?" he asked through the glass, his voice muffled by the rain. Selina hesitated. He looked poor, maybe her age, maybe younger. His clothes were faded, his shoes more holes than fabric, but there was something in his eyes, calm, kind. She cracked the window just enough to hear. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said. "I live down the road. I fix cars. I can try if you want." She stared at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Please." The man opened the hood of her car, rolling up his sleeves. His fingers moved quickly, with quiet confidence. Selina watched as rain trickled down his sharp cheekbones and into the collar of his soaked shirt. After about 10 minutes, he slammed the hood closed. "Try it now," he said, stepping back. Selina turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. She gasped in relief. "You did it!" she exclaimed. The man gave a small smile. "Just a loose wire. Easy. Fix." "Thank you so much," she said, reaching for her purse. She pulled out some bills. "Here, for your trouble." He shook his head. "Keep it." "But you helped me in the rain." "I didn't do it for money." She looked at him, truly looked at him. His clothes were soaked through. His hands were rough from work. But he stood tall, proud, even as raindrops ran down his face. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Eli," he said, brushing his dark curls from his forehead. "Eli," she smiled. "I'm Selina." "I know," he replied, chuckling a little. "Your dad's name is on the car." She laughed too. "Right." A silence fell between them, gentle, not awkward. "Where were you headed?" he asked. "Just a weekend trip. I needed to get away." Eli nodded. "Well, your car should be fine now. But if it gives you trouble again, my garage is down. The road, just past the diner. It's not much, but it works." "I'll remember that," Selina said. She looked down at the money in her hand, then back at him. "Are you sure you don't want—" "I'm sure," he interrupted. "You take care, Selina." He turned and began to walk away, his shoulders hunched slightly against the rain. She watched him go until the storm swallowed him. As she drove off, warmth spread through her chest. Not because the engine worked again, but because, in the middle of a storm, a stranger with nothing gave her everything he had, and didn't ask for a single thing in return. It had been 5 days since the rainstorm. Selina couldn't stop thinking about him. She was back in the city now, surrounded by everything money could buy. Soft sheets, crystal chandeliers, 5-course meals. But her mind kept drifting to a dusty roadside, to a boy with rain in his eyes and oil on his fingers, Eli. He hadn't taken her money. He hadn't asked for anything. He'd just helped her. In her world, that kind of kindness didn't exist. People only gave with conditions. They smiled with expectations. But Eli, he had nothing, and still gave more than anyone else ever had. Selina found herself searching for excuses to return. She told her driver she wanted to visit the countryside again, just to clear her head. She dressed casually this time, jeans, sneakers, a simple shirt, and asked to be dropped off at the little diner in Woodglen. She didn't know what she was doing. Maybe he wouldn't even be there. Maybe he wouldn't remember her. But as she pushed open the diner door, a soft bell rang overhead. The woman behind the counter looked up with a raised brow. "Looking for someone, sweetheart?" she asked. Selina hesitated. "Actually, yes. A guy named Eli. He fixed my car last week, said his garage was near here." The woman smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Eli Foster, kind boy. His shop's just around the corner. He works all day, rain or shine." "Thank you," Selina said, her heart fluttering as she stepped back into the sunlight. She found the garage easily. It wasn't much, a small building with a rusted roof, a faded sign that simply read, "Eli's Auto." But inside she saw him, bent under a hood covered in grease, humming a soft tune to himself. "Eli," she called gently. He turned, blinking in surprise. For a second his expression was unreadable. Then a slow smile crept across his face. "You came back." I wanted to say thank you again," she said, walking closer. "And I didn't get the chance to ask how you learned to fix cars." Eli chuckled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Trial and error. My dad was a mechanic before. He passed. Left behind some tools, a few books. I picked up the rest." She looked around the shop. It was neat and quiet, filled with tools, bolts, and a small radio playing old country songs. "You built this by yourself?" "Bit by bit," he said. "Had to. Mama's not well. Medical bills don't pay themselves." Selina nodded, her chest tightening. "I'm sorry about your dad and your mom." Eli shrugged, but there was a quiet weight in his eyes. Life doesn't ask for permission before it takes things. They stood in silence for a moment. "Would you," Selina began, then paused. "Would you maybe have lunch with me? My treat, just to say thank you." He tilted his head, half smiling. "Are you sure? I'm not exactly dressed for fancy places." She smiled back. "I'm not taking you to a 5-star restaurant, Eli. I just want to talk." He nodded slowly. "All right. Let me lock up." They walked to a quiet spot behind the diner, a patch of grass with a worn picnic table. Selina had bought 2 sandwiches and sodas. They sat beneath a tree, the warm sun drying the leftover damp in the air. "So," she said, unwrapping her sandwich, "what else do you do when you're not fixing cars?" Eli smiled. "I read, mostly old books, some poetry. I play guitar, a little. Used to sing for Mama before her lungs got too weak." Selina was taken aback. "You sing?" "Not for crowds," he said quickly, his ears turning red. She laughed. "You just keep surprising me." "And you're not what I expected either," he said, glancing at her. "Most rich folks wouldn't give me the time of day, let alone come back." She looked down at her food, quiet for a moment. "Money doesn't make life easier, just prettier on the outside." Their eyes met again, and this time there was something different, something softer. From that day on, Selina visited more often. Sometimes she brought him lunch, other times just stories about her life. In return, Eli showed her parts of the town she'd never see in magazines, the quiet riverbank, the old library, the abandoned train station where he used to play as a boy. They laughed. They shared secrets. They started finishing each other's sentences, but word spread fast in small towns. And in the tall glass building miles away, Mr. Hartley, Selina's powerful, controlling father, heard whispers of his daughter spending time with a poor mechanic, and he was not pleased. The call came on a Wednesday evening. Selina was curled up on her bed, smiling at a text from Eli, a blurry photo of an old music box he'd found at a yard sale. "Reminded me of you. Delicate, but full of surprises." Her heart fluttered as she typed a reply, but before she could hit send, her phone rang. "Dad." She froze. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep her voice even. "Selina." His tone was calm, too calm. "We need to talk, now." She didn't have a choice. 30 minutes later, she was sitting across from her father in his marble-floored office, the city skyline glowing behind him. "I heard you've been spending time in Woodglen," he said, pouring himself a drink. "With a boy, a mechanic." Selina's heart raced. "How did you—" "I have eyes everywhere, Selina. I can't have my only daughter seen with someone like that. It's not good for the family name." She clenched her fists. "Eli isn't someone like that. He's kind, honest. He's more of a man than anyone you've introduced me to." Mr. Hartley's voice grew cold. "He has nothing, no education, no future. Do you really think someone like him can give you the life you deserve?" "I don't care about the life you think I deserve," she shot back. "I care about how he makes me feel. And he makes me feel safe, seen." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Selina, you're still young. You don't know what love is. You're just chasing a fantasy." She stood up, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, Dad, I'm chasing what you never gave Mom, something real." The room went silent. His jaw tightened. "I won't let you throw your future away for a poor boy with dirty hands," he said sharply. "Then I'll go without your permission," she whispered, her voice trembling. He stared at her, the weight of silence thick between them. "If you walk out that door," he said, "you won't come back." Later that night, Selina sat in her car outside Eli's garage, hands shaking on the steering wheel. He stepped out when he saw her, headlights wiping his hands on a rag. "You okay?" he asked, noticing the tears on her cheeks. She nodded barely. "No!" They sat in silence on the hood of her car, the moonlight casting silver shadows on the pavement. "My father found out," she finally said. "He told me to stop seeing you, that I was ruining my future." Eli looked down, the pain in his eyes unmistakable. "He's right." "What?" she whispered. "I don't belong in your world, Selina. And deep down, you know it. You live in a place with gates and guards. I live in a place with broken engines and second chances. People like me, we're not supposed to end up with people like you." She grabbed his hand. "Don't say that. I can't let you burn bridges with your family because of me," he said softly. "You'll regret it one day." "I won't," she cried, gripping his hand tighter. "Eli, But he gently pulled away. "You need to go," he said, his voice cracking, "before this hurts more than it already does." Selina stood there, broken, staring at the boy who had held her heart so gently, only to let it fall. She pulled a thin silver bracelet from her wrist and placed it in his hand. "I want you to keep this," she said, barely able to speak, "to remember me." He nodded, eyes glistening, but said nothing. She turned away, the sound of her footsteps echoing like thunder in his chest. As her car disappeared into the night, Eli clutched the bracelet, holding it like a piece of something. Too good to be true, because it was, and he had let it go. The days after Selina left felt like years. Eli kept himself busy. He poured his heart into work, fixing engines, repainting old trucks, taking jobs no one else wanted. It was easier to stay moving than to sit with the ache that settled deep in his chest every time he saw the silver bracelet glinting from the hook above his workbench. He hadn't told his mother what happened. She could see it in his eyes. "You're still thinking about her," she said one night as he spooned soup into her bowl. He gave a weak smile. "It doesn't matter. That world was never mine to begin with." She reached out and touched his hand. "Maybe not. But sometimes the heart doesn't care where you come from. It only knows where it belongs." Eli said nothing, but he heard. In the city, Selina was a ghost in her own home. She did what her father asked, attended meetings, smiled at parties, pretended to listen as wealthy suitors tried to impress her. But her laughter was forced. Her heart wasn't in it. Nothing felt right anymore. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, she pulled out her phone and searched for Eli's auto Woodglen. To her surprise, a small website popped up. It was simple. Just a few photos, a contact number, and a short note. Honest work, fair prices, no job too small. The newest photo showed Eli in a cleaner version of his overalls, standing beside a newly painted garage wall. Behind him was a handmade sign that read, "Foster and Sons, Hope Restored, One Fix at a Time." Tears filled Selina's eyes. Had kept going, grown, built something. Without her. Back in Woodglen, Eli's name was starting to spread. People from nearby towns came to him for work because they trusted him. He trained a few local teens who needed second chances, just like he once did. The garage was growing, slowly but strong. One morning, a black car pulled up, but it wasn't Selina. A man in a suit stepped out, stern, stiff, familiar. It was Mr. Hartley. Eli wiped his hands and stepped forward cautiously. "Mr. Hartley?" The man didn't smile. He looked around at the humble garage, the worn tools, the oil-streaked floor. "So this is the place my daughter kept running off to," he said. Eli tensed. "I haven't seen her in months, sir. She made her choice." "Mr." Hartley studied him for a long time, then nodded slightly. "I didn't come here to accuse you. I came here because I had a heart attack 3 weeks ago, almost didn't make it." Eli blinked, taken aback. Mr. Hartley's voice softened. "When I was in the hospital, Selina stayed with me every day, and one night I heard her crying, saying she let go of the only person who ever saw her for who she really was." He looked Eli in the eye. "I thought I was protecting her, but maybe I was just protecting myself from losing control." Eli said nothing. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Mr. Hartley continued, "but I came here to say I was wrong." He pulled something from his coat pocket and placed it gently on the counter, the bracelet. "She left this on my desk," he said. "Told me if I ever saw you, to return it. Said it belonged to someone brave enough to love her when no one else did." And with that, he turned and walked away. That night, Eli stood under the stars, the bracelet resting in his palm. He didn't sleep. Couldn't. By morning, he was driving into the city, his old truck rattling as it passed sleek cars and polished sidewalks. He didn't know what he was going to say, but his heart knew where it wanted to be. He found her in the garden behind her father's house, sitting on a bench under a flowering tree. Her hair was longer now, but when she turned and saw him, her breath caught just like it used to. "Eli," she whispered. He walked to her slowly, then knelt in front of her. "I never stopped loving you, Selina. Not for a second." Tears filled her eyes. "I thought you moved on." "Never. I was just trying to survive without you." She reached out, her fingers brushing the bracelet now wrapped around his wrist. "I missed you every day." He smiled through tears. "Then come back with me, not to the past, but to whatever future we can build, together." She nodded, crying as she threw her arms around him, and this time, neither of them let go. 1 year later. The little garage that once echoed with silence now buzzed with life. The walls had been repainted. A new sign hung proudly over the door. Foster and Hartley Auto Works. Below it, in smaller letters, where second chances are always welcome. Inside, Eli worked side by side with two young apprentices. Laughter bounced off the walls as they joked and sang along to a country song on the radio. But his favorite sound came from the office in the back. Selina's soft voice as she answered customer calls and scheduled appointments, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she moved between shelves and paperwork. She had traded her pearls for work boots, her cocktail dresses for denim and flannel, and she'd never been happier. Every day, Eli looked at her like she was the miracle he never dared pray for. And every night, when they locked the garage and walked hand in hand through the quiet town, he thanked the stars for a love that waited. They didn't have a mansion or fancy cars, but they had each other. And on the nights when the power flickered, or the bills came in higher than expected, they lit candles and cooked cheap noodles, laughing like children over stories from their different worlds. Eli never stopped fixing things. But now, he wasn't just repairing engines, he was helping build futures. With Selina's help, he started a small foundation to train underprivileged youth in auto repair. The garage became more than a business. It became a place of healing, of hope, of beginnings. Sometimes Mr. Hartley visited, not as a father laying down rules, but as a man slowly learning to let go. He watched his daughter take grease-stained tools into her soft hands and smile like she'd finally come home. One afternoon, as he stood outside the garage watching her laugh with Eli, he whispered to himself, "She chose well." Months later, Eli planned something special. It was a warm spring evening. He led Selina to the old riverbank, the one where they once sat on a blanket and shared stories of dreams too big for their wallets. The place where she once told him she felt seen. A lantern flickered nearby. Fireflies blinked in the air. And, in the quiet, Eli dropped to one knee. Selina gasped. "I don't have a diamond," he said, holding up a small silver ring made from a bolt he'd shaped himself. "But I have a promise. To love you with everything I am, to build a life no matter how rough the road." Tears streamed down her face. "Eli." "So, Miss Selina Hartley, will you be my partner, my love, my forever?" She dropped to her knees with him and kissed him through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The wedding was small, just family, close friends, and a few old customers who'd become more like neighbors. Selina wore a simple white dress, her hair tied back with a string of wildflowers. Eli wore his only suit, patched and slightly snug. They said their vows under a handmade arch of tools and flowers, and when they kissed, no one cared that it wasn't in a cathedral or followed by a 5-tier cake, because it was real. It was love. That night, as they sat beneath the stars, wrapped in an old quilt, Selina laid her head on Eli's shoulder. "You know," she whispered, "that broken car was the best thing that ever happened to me." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "It broke down just so we could begin." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other's warmth, their hearts beating in the quiet rhythm of a life they had chosen, one not built by wealth or power, but by kindness, courage, and the kind of love that doesn't give up, even when everything else does. And so, from one broken car on a rainy road, a story was born. A story that proved sometimes the richest love comes from the poorest places, and that when hearts are true, even the deepest wounds can become the strongest bonds.